I'm Karen North-Shelley. I'm Vice President of Global Marketing at Bellatrix Software. For those of you who are new to Bellatrix, Bellatrix Software helps companies all over the world innovate. We help them create the software that are in or enable their products to flourish. Using a nearshore partnership model, we transform our clients' product development concepts from ideation, those ideas, those wonderful ideas out there, to high-quality software that meets the needs of customers and end users, and hopefully, in the end, really supports your business goals. We work with clients in industries like financial services, and some of those individuals are actually here on the call today. Healthcare and biotech, online learning, media and entertainment, and lots of others. And we do this through Agile. We're delighted to host this session today, and we hope it really triggers lots of ideas on how you can use Scrum in your organization, or if you're already using Agile, that you find ways to optimize that process. And as a little takeaway for you personally in your role as an executive, that you figure out, how can you really transform how you work with the people in your organization to help produce a better output with Scrum. A few initial comments before we get started. This session is being recorded. Your phone is therefore in listen-only mode until we open up the lines for questions. However, I do encourage you to submit your questions at any point throughout the session. My role today is really to guide the conversation, to really ensure that your questions are in fact answered, either as a part of the session or in the case of questions that we may not be able to get to in time, we will certainly follow up with you with some sort of an email response. One last housekeeping item. As a follow-up to today, we'll be emailing you with a link to the materials covered during the session. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about what's really prompting this session. No surprise, you're hearing a lot about Agile. And you're probably seeing a lot of interesting information out there on Agile. There's certainly a wealth of information. But what you're also probably seeing is that most of that information is really geared to how practitioners use Agile. So you're probably not really attuned to what you as the executive should really take away from Agile. I'm sure you're looking at how to build a business case for Agile, but what does it mean for how you actually operate as an executive? The goal today is really to open up that discussion. We're going to try to decode Agile software development and help you do your role better. Let's jump into introducing our speakers today. First, we have Lorraine Maffi-Dodds. Lorraine is a senior project leader at Bellatrix. Lorraine is also a certified Scrum Master. She works with some of Bellatrix clients and really champions their efforts to create innovative software products. And she does that by helping our clients really tap into the design, the development, and testing expertise that Bellatrix and our teams bring to the picture. She brings exceptional day-to-day, practical, very, very practical insight on how you take that theory behind Agile and ultimately put it into practice and see those results. And I know you'll find her insights particularly valuable. We're also incredibly, incredibly honored to have Hubert Smits with us. Hubert is a renowned expert in the field of Agile development. He's actually been incredibly instrumental in the genesis of Agile as a software methodology. Hubert has worked with well-known companies such as Rally Software and GE Capital. He has his own management consulting, coaching, and training firm that's based out of Denver. And in fact, just a little side note about Denver, Colorado today is experiencing a blizzard, and that happens to be where Hubert is today. So we are going to be hearing from Hubert, and you can have that picture of a blizzard in your mind's eye. Hubert works very, very closely with Bellatrix. He has trained and certified Bellatrix software engineering teams in both Mendoza, Argentina, as well as our newest location in Lima, Peru. And he's one of our most valued and trusted Scrum advisors and mentors. We're absolutely delighted to have Hubert and Lorraine lead us through this discussion today, and we hope you find it valuable. Over to you, Hubert.
Thank you, Karen. And indeed, from a rather white Colorado, let's talk about something more warm or hotter today. Talking about Scrum and specifically the role of the executive in Scrum. As a really quick 2-minute refresher, what are we talking about when we talk about Scrum? I'm assuming that most of you have seen this, the iterative process that works from a list of requirements, just like any other project, starting with requirements, features that your product owner, probably yourself, wants to have delivered. But rather than running a 6 or an 8 or 15 month big project to do it all at once, Scrum does do it in short bursts of activity, in short sprints, 2-4 weeks of activity to deliver another increment of the product. And every increment, every little step is shippable. That's the basis of Scrum. Again, I assume that you've worked with this. If you look at this picture, which you will see in pretty much every publication about Scrum, then what's mainly missing is how does that backlog, that list of things to do, get created, and what's your role in that? And that's the topic for today. We won't dive much into the Scrum process at all, but we will look at how that backlog gets created. Another little bit of scene setting. When I talk about executives in an organization, CXO level, I distinguish two groups of people, and that grouping is taken from what John Kotter writes about management, and specifically what he writes about change management. He talks about leaders, the people who set the scene, who set the direction for whatever needs to be achieved in an organization. We are focusing on products, and I believe that leadership sets a direction, says here is where the organization needs to be 12, 15 months from now to remain competitive, to make money, to do what our customers want us to do, what they expect us to do. Managers is the group of people who then pick up those ideas, that direction, and now start to create a system around it. System as much as products as a system, but also the whole process of delivery as a system. So where leadership will choose and create that case, that business case to go agile, management will then create an agile process in an organization. Products, leadership will say this is where we want to go with the product. Product management will then detail it out and be instrumental to write that product backlog. Both leadership and management. Yes, Karen, go ahead.
Just a question. Who would you see? What functions do you see would be a part of the leaders? Which functions?
Functions have what we're focusing on today, but that's only part of functions for leaders. Focus today is product functions, and to a lesser extent, organizational change functions, setting the directions, doing research. When I worked at GE, if I looked at what leadership was doing there, they were expected to be part, to communicate, to engage with researchers, looking what's coming up for our product 3-5 years ahead of us, and select features that they want to have incorporated in the GE products. They also work on a daily basis with product management, making sure that product management picks up on those ideas and starts translating them. That's only part. They of course also have their financial responsibilities, people management responsibilities, public relations, you name it. What we're talking here is product development as leadership responsibilities. Is that what you were looking for?
Yes, actually, absolutely. But I also wondered whether the CTO, for instance, would fall into the category of leaders.
Oh, I absolutely think so. And with the CTO, there's an interesting aspect to it, because with his or her responsibility, not only for product, or maybe only partly for product and product definition, certainly responsible for execution, for how does product get developed. So a move to Agile will see the CTO at the steering wheel and building a business case for the migration to Agile, leading the organizational change, allowing the change to happen, picking initial projects. All that's part of change, and again, referring to the John Copper philosophies there, that's what I would expect specifically from a CTO. And by the way, thank you for the questions, and I assume that some of those are coming from the audience. But everybody in the audience, please fire away with your questions in the little GoToWebinar box, and Karen will pick them up and fire them away at me, or at Lorraine. So you can be interactive while we're talking. A lecture is okay, but an interaction would be great. You good with that, Karen?
That sounds perfect. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So back to leadership, and then moving on, diving into the content. An interesting book and an interesting move is at the moment going on, and Stephen Denning, the author of Radical Management, the book on the bottom right of your slide, is kind of leading that whole movement. He is bringing management into the Agile world. And if you read his book and you've ever been through Scrum training of any sort, Scrum Master, for example, or Product Owner, you'll be wondering whether he's writing about a Scrum Master class, but he's applying it to management, and that is wholeheartedly recommended as a good read on your bedside table. Stephen is now a member of the Scrum Alliance board, so he's not only writing, publishing about it, also getting deep involved in the whole Scrum movement. But let's not dwell on that. Let's move on to where leadership and management has a role in product development, the main topic for today. A couple of years ago, I published an article about planning, 5 levels of planning in Agile projects. If you're interested in the article, then send us a note, and we'll send you a copy of it. But it talks about continuous planning in Agile projects, not a big plan up front, but continuous planning. And the early stages of planning, the product vision, product roadmap, is where I expect both leadership and management to have a strong involvement, a place in the driver's seat, if you like. Executive, CTOs, other people in the leadership team, they set the vision, probably once a year, twice a year. It's not something that radically changes. But they set that goal, that idea. They're steering the ship called their organization. And executive at that point expects product management, who was involved in declaring and explaining a vision, to pick it up and to start slicing it into steps, still big steps, still releases. Each release will have a duration of 2, 3, 4 months. But they start applying that Scrum principle of focus. Not a whole project gets delivered at once, but we'll make small steps in it, smaller, so that you as a member of the leadership team have opportunities to interrupt, to steer the product in a different direction where you need to do so to remain competitive, as well as to get earlier results? Why wait 15 months before you can ship something and make money out of it if you could do it every 3 months or even more frequently? So creating a roadmap, defining the releases, and populating the product backlog is the role for product management. Still in collaboration with the executives, reviews, prioritization sessions, etc. But management is taking the role of populating the product backlog. Later in that process of creating a backlog, the team members will become involved. They will provide estimates. They will create a release plan. They will set and manage expectations. And that's just prior to the handoff, full handoff to the teams. Once we start releasing and sprint planning and daily meetings, the teams are in full control. That's where they are self-organizing, and by doing that, being the most productive. I'm going to let go of that. Our focus is you and your leadership role, and the work you're doing is in those early stages. Here's a bit more detail around it. Trying to bring an agility into the way that an executive, a management team, steers product development. Where in history, when we were running waterfall projects, you had an opportunity maybe once a year, twice a year at most, to change where a project is going by just kicking off a next project or interrupting an existing one. An interrupt was always expensive, slowed things down, and before you knew it, your product was delayed with 3 months, 6 months. When I worked at Cisco in voice technology, a typical project would be planned for 6 months to 9 months, and it would take on average 15 months to get something out. That's a very slow response to market demand, and what this model that I'm now showing you is trying to do is give you a faster response time to demands from the market. The work I spoke about in the previous slide, that visioning and road mapping, is what I try to picture here in that refinement stage. That's where your vision, architecture, even budgets and other variables are collected and are creating that product backlog with its priorities. When the backlog is ready, the team comes on board and release planning happens, and the teams are ready to kick off work for, let's say, the next 3 months. Not a whole lot longer, keep that short. The teams are working, like I said, they're self-organizing, but while they're working, the world around us changes. And you as a leadership group, CTO, product management, you will find needs to change the content of the project. And rather than changing what's going on, we're still agile, by the way. From sprint to sprint, change can happen, but don't make that massive. Don't introduce a whole new concept like a mobile version of your application or a cloud version of your application. And if you have such ideas, enter in a new refinement stage. You've adjusted your vision, you've adjusted your priorities, work it out, create the new product backlog with a goal to have you in your leadership group, your product management group, ready with the requirements, ready for another planning session, release planning session, when the teams have finished and can go live with the results of the first release.
Hubert, I have a little bit of a question coming in,
Yes,
so
please.
I'm going to interrupt a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are there issues, where are there likely to be issues that the executive should be on the lookout for?
I think that issues in an agile implementation are what I see most often in my environment is that, and with my customers, is that agile is seen as a silver bullet. oh, we're agile, we can change everything all the time and still have results coming in fast. That's like steering a speedboat through the waters and going left to right and backwards and forwards. It's a great ride, but you don't really arrive somewhere. And that's kind of pushing Agile too far. You need a direction, and that's where leadership comes in, by setting a vision, which can be adjusted. That's a model we now have on the screen. You can adjust the vision every 3 months or 4 months. That's fine, but during the months that we are working towards the vision, let the teams work. Another obstacle, and that will come back later in the slides, is that that management, in order to achieve those great things about Agile, faster, better, cheaper, they'll have to let the team self-organize. Less micromanagement, more self-organization. We'll come back to that topic in a little bit. Is that what you were thinking of, Karen?
I think so. That's great. Thank you, Hubert. I'm wondering if we can bring Lorraine into this discussion as well, and get her impressions of, how she and her teams might be affected by this particular part of the process.
Yes, I was also thinking while I was looking at Hubert's diagram. For instance, when we talk on release planning, at least in my experience as a Scrum Master, we normally attend the release planning meetings with our subject matter expert as well, not with the whole team. The subject matter expert, which we've had on our side, needs to have a clear visibility on our partner's vision to be able to elaborate on a design thinking basis and be able to research and develop an innovative approach using creativity to come up with the optimal way to materialize that vision by first designing the architecture and then selecting the tools that will be used. And when we go down the line with the different levels of planning and we get to the team, the product owner tells the team what needs to be done, but it's the team that decides how to do it. And that is also very good for the team to feel that freedom and that trust that has been deposited on them to be able to develop and come up with great ideas and always try to think out which is the best way to materialize the development.
So what I'm hearing here is that at this stage it's really, really important to bring in as many perspectives as possible to make sure that you expose the plan so that everyone is on the same page. And you can get that the wealth of experience and perspective from all of the individuals necessary for this stage. Is that how you would see it, Hubert?
Yes, indeed. And what I'm trying to show with the colors behind that refinement activity is that it gets more and more intense, trying to show more and more people involved. So what Lorraine is saying, that the team, first of all, the experts, subject matter experts, etc., get involved, getting more views on the demands, the requirements. Yes, exactly. That's what needs to be done there. It starts with product management saying, this is what I want, and it ends with a release plan that nicely lays out what can be done in the next couple of months by all the teams involved. And that's a process that keeps repeating while the teams are delivering. In the background, the product development group, with as much involvement and steering of the leadership team as necessary, will keep replanning, and hence the title of the slide, planning to replan, giving just enough structure and, on the other hand, enough flexibility to deliver your products as soon as you can, to deliver value as soon as you can. By doing this, if I look at what does the leadership team get out of it, there are a couple of things. One is in this picture, an early warning system What I'm trying to show here is that any project on the vertical axis has a goal, has an amount of features to deliver. If you're familiar with Agile, the word story point may tell you something, but otherwise write features there will do just fine for this example. And every few weeks, every time that a sprint cycle ends, the horizontal axis, you can just plot out how many features were delivered. And that red line, if that traces the green line, then we're delivering our features fast enough, or the teams are delivering features fast enough to reach the project goal on the desired date. On the other hand, like in this picture, if we trend off, if the red line sticks under the green line, the teams are too slow. Well, on the one hand, you have to learn why that is and what you can do to help. On the other hand, you have an opportunity to influence early. Maybe they're missing skills. Maybe they don't have enough people. There are lots of options possible there. The key thing with going Agile is that you get an early warning if a project will come in late. We're avoiding that famous end stage of a waterfall project where 4-6 weeks before go live, a project lead panics and says, we're going to be late. And at that point, being so late in the game, you have very few options to bring the project in on time. So early warning is definitely a plus.
I'm sure that the CFO and the teams really appreciate that they can have that early warning, so they don't incur the wrath of sales and marketing going out too soon.
Well, yes, you're right about that one. Yet Agile adds another interesting concept. Since we are delivering working software after every sprint, let's take on this picture the very pessimistic view, that first dotted line that on the end date of the project shows that only half the features are delivered. But those half of the features are delivered. They can go live. And you can sell. If you prioritize right, those are also the most important features. So you're absolutely right that a CFO has got now a mechanism to see early on that things are going wrong. But on the positive side, it's not as wrong as before. In a waterfall project, there's nothing. In Agile, 50% of the features work fine. And using the famous 80-20 rule, 50% of your features are probably serving 80-90% of your customer needs. It's another option that you have here. But yes, very well observed. Thank you. Other benefits for you as in the leadership team, what we just said was that continuous delivery of the product increments. You always get working software. And I've had people from Blue Cross Insurance in my classes. They had one of the people had a canceled project. They were only 3 or 4 months into a 9-month project. They were going Agile, and they said, no, we didn't like it that we got canceled. Of course not. But what we had is in production. It is working, it's operational, and it's absolutely doing what it should be doing. So that's a key advantage. You have an ability to tweak the direction of the project every few weeks when a sprint ends. But the big changes, reserve those at the end of a release. Don't do that too often. No need for brusque interrupts, for wasting money. On the flip side, though, you will now be continuously involved. In the waterfall project, you kick off the project, you set the vision and the demands and the project charter, and 9 months later there's a product. It might be right, it might be wrong, but there's very little involvement for management and the executive. Now you need, we are giving you a steering wheel. Now you have to take a seat, a driver's seat, to use that steering wheel. And so that's the continuous focus and the continuous involvement that's expected of you. The other hand, that's probably the biggest warning with going Agile at an organizational scale. is that it will create change with all the things attached to change, people being afraid of change, some people resisting change, the need for training, the need for leadership. That's an absolute must-have. It's nice if you engage with delivery teams who have already done this. Within your own organization, yeah, people will face a whole different approach, and start that carefully. The article that Karen mentioned in my introduction, the CIO Playbook, is an article that writes about it. Start with small projects. You as a CTO, choose them cleverly. Don't do that super big 2,000 people project as a first Agile project. Take something smaller, and be aware of what it causes in the organization. But that's basically what's in it for the product people. I don't know, Lorraine, do you have other things that you observed here? Can you talk about a real life example, maybe?
Yes, well, when I was looking at this slide and listening to what you were saying, at least from the team perspective, one knows that sometimes business have drastic changes and they need to adapt, and Agile is very good for that. But when we go down to the actual sprint time box, that's especially where you don't need to do the brusque interruptions, and you give a chance for the team to self-organize and get the sprint goals done. For instance, we were working with a company that is a cloud services broker, and they provide businesses with a single place to discover, buy, monitor, and manage all their cloud services. So we used Agile methodology to be able to materialize this vision, and we went increment by increment. We went building a platform, integrating in a single user experience for easy use and management, several and very different third-party services. And this was an integrated project, so for their customers they only had one monthly invoice and only one point for technical support, which simplified their customers' lives. And this was a very encouraging and a very satisfying and a very challenging project which we worked on.
Lorraine, just building on what you've shared, can you share a little bit more about the kinds of reports that the executive may have had access to understand the progress of the project?
Okay, from my perspective, one of the things I really enjoy of an Agile methodology is that project tracking is made easy. We had a handwritten diagram a couple of slides back, and that's a kind of diagram where the whole team every single day loads information in a very easy way of what their progress was. So then it's very easy. At any time, you immediately get a picture of where exactly the team progress is. And this is, as all the team is all the time inputting this kind of information, this is a very dynamic photograph of where the team is at. So this really gives you a good sense of control of what is happening with the team and what is happening with the work. I think that's one very good point for the Agile methodology and the tools we use to carry it out.
Just to build on that, if I may, Karen, when you and I were working on a large insurance project together, we had 4 teams running in parallel. Reporting is simple in an Agile project. The main report is that early warning system. That is what I took to the steering committee on a bi-weekly basis. That tells it all. Are we going to deliver on time? And if not, then of course I need to have information about why not and what I'm going to do about it. But this is the key report.
I think we're encountering a little bit of a blizzard issue with Hubert. The sound has gone out a little bit. Hubert,
Can you
are you
still
there?
hear me? Can you still hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Hey, wonder what that was. Sorry about that, folks.
Apparently the blizzard got heavier.
It is all white out here. It's yes, but that's an interesting problem for after the webinar. So what I was saying, what I was adding to what Lorraine was saying, yes, simplified reporting. This early warning report is a very simple yet very powerful report to a steering committee. It shows exactly whether we're on track or not, and if not, I need to have, as a program manager, an explanation about what I'm going to do about it. I can combine this with team-by-team analysis over the last sprint, the famous burn-down charts, add a budget burn chart to it, and I'm fully equipped to handle most of the questions of a CFO. I can keep things really, really simple. Does that answer your question, Karen? Because we kind of took it away from you.
It does. Thank you very much, Hubert. I also do want to interject with another question that's coming in. In an agile environment, how do you ensure that the incremental development is technically sound and continues to conform to the architecture principles? The requester is asking if there's a technical design, if there are technical design steps that are incorporated into Scrum.
Yes, there are. I'm trying to organize the answer here because there's a couple of questions merged together. Yes, there is technical design going on. That I'm back to that slide about refinement before release planning happens. There is just enough design going on there to tackle the big issues. If your company decides to go mobile with their solution, and mobile is new to the organization, in the refinement stage, you will look at what that does to your product, to your development environment, to your people. There is some technical and architectural design going on up front. The skill is to keep that light enough to not try to design out everything up front, but deep enough to make sure that you're not 6 months in a project and then go, uh-oh, I wish we had. That's something you would like to avoid. Requires experienced people. Then, while delivering, while sprinting, the practice that I advocate is that in a running sprint, say that we're running sprint number 3. In sprint number 3, the team is dedicating enough time to do technical design for sprint number 4. So if there are screen designs, workflows, technical implementations necessary that need some upfront thinking, do that just in time. Do that one sprint ahead is the principle I would advocate there, and that's the way I would implement and teach. Then delivering quality software without defects and adhering to architectural and other standards, that's all part of shippable and what we call done in Scrum. Done is a definition of all the steps, all the deliverables, all the reviews that are required for each and every piece of software that comes out of the team. And the thinking there is that it's a lot cheaper and faster to deliver clean code right away than to try and fix it afterwards. You can, as the statement goes, you cannot test for quality. You have to build quality into your process. And that's what we're doing by early testing, test-driven development. Those practices help you to stick to those standards. If the person asking those questions has got more questions around it, then fire away, of course. Shall we move on, Karen?
Thank you.
To the next topic, because we wrapped up on what's in that plan to replan concept, where the expectations from management and leadership is that they're involved a lot, significantly more than in the past. And if we look now, where I started to look at leadership, now a bit more looking at management, the development managers, the project managers, product managers. Agile is a lot more hands-off than what we were used to. In my classes, I compare it to juggling balls. If you want to juggle 3 balls, most people, including myself by the way, fail at it because we don't dare to let go of 2 of the 3 balls. And that's the only way to be able to juggle. If you as management want to get all those magic results out of Scrum, the faster, better, cheaper, the only way to do that is to let go of your team. You let the workers drive the plans, the how of the work. They estimate, they find solutions. You can have a conversation, you can bring your expertise there, but there's a fine balance between telling and guiding. Telling is the wrong thing. The team will just do what you tell them to do. And if that goes wrong, well, then it's your fault. Let the workers plan. They have a lot more brain power to bring to the table. And they come up with incredible solutions that you never thought about. It will take learning. It's the first time you go into that mobile project that I was using as an example. There will be mistakes. The mistake is discovered in 2 weeks. At the end of the 2 weeks, going back to the question that we just discussed, if we build quality into the process, we know at the end of the 2 weeks that the team delivered something that's not working. That's not good. Let me not try to talk that right. It's not good. And you as a development manager or a product manager, you can expect that the team takes that serious and sits down, closes the door, grabs a cup of coffee, and in a retrospective says, oh, how did that happen? We're better than this. We do not allow low quality or failing solutions to come out of our process. That's an expectation you can and should have. It's not a free-for-all. It's not that the team does do their own planning and they take all the fun requirements and they don't care about business value. They have to. They have to follow the priorities that you as a management and leadership team have set. So you expect solutions and progress, but let it go. That's what I call hands-off management. You're there to solve problems, to work with them. The best example of this is at the moment there's a whole bookshelf of books on SEAL teams coming out after those brave guys got Osama bin Laden out of his area. Everybody's writing a book on it, and when I read one of them, it occurred to me that that's very much a Scrum team. There is a leadership who says, this is what I want you to do, and go get that guy. And then the team starts to self-organize. They ask for information, they ask for maps, they ask for intelligence details, they ask for tools and weapons and what have you. And that's what management, military management, provides to them. And then they draw their own plan. And ultimately, when the go moment is there, they go for it. And when something goes wrong, like one of the helicopters came down, they just decide. They decide to blow it up, leave it behind, and move on and get the job done. And they have results. That is how I think about a Scrum team. I expect them to get the job done, and I will check on that every 2 weeks, but I expect them also to organize themselves. I cannot do their job for them. So that's hands-off management, which should result in the famous better, faster, cheaper. That if you took your Scrum training from Wilbert, then you have learned about this. And yeah, funny joke. Scrum can be better, faster, cheaper. If you listen to people in this space, I've seen a doubling, tripling of productivity of teams without a lot of effort. If you listen to Jeff Sutherland, he talks about a 10x productivity increase. I'm a bit careful with that remark. But it's absolutely possible, but it's done through letting the teams do their own thing, and that will go against our training, the way we've been doing things for a long time. Lorraine, you're a project manager. How do you like all this?
Well, Hubert, one of the things that I really like about Agile is these hands-off. I think the 2-week sprints really allows the team to self-organize, and this works wonderfully well with the developers. Having a clear picture of what is needed, they're able to work out how to achieve it. And this trust that is put on them is great in developing a deep commitment with the project, and they really get to live the project as their own. And the freedom they get to be able to decide on how to do things is very motivating, and I think builds very good professionals. So I think this is a good mix for the team to work happily and committed.
Lorraine,
Yes?
Lorraine, you raise an important point about trust. How have you seen trust built practically? I mean, how do you go about this? This is something that people grapple with, but and of course trust is a hard thing to do, but how does this emerge in working with project teams?
Well, trust is something we build on every single day of our work life. We work very far away from our customers, but as one of the things that Agile asks for is the daily stand-up meeting, we are able to contact every single day, and that means that we really get to know each other. And I believe that trust is built through that daily contact, and especially because every single day you can find out if we run into an obstacle, and sometimes we do, we immediately advise, okay, we have this problem, what should we do, what is more important, and I think that's how trust is built.
What about, sometimes engineers can be shy. Is this, something that you have to work at in order to encourage people to bring out areas of concern? How do you foster that communication?
I think that engineers tend to be naturally shy, that it goes part with the profession. But one of the objects or the purposes of the Scrum Master is to make sure that everybody can communicate clearly, and the first meetings can be kind of awkward, but as we do them every single day, it gets to be very smooth in the long run.
And if you think about the executives that you've worked with, what are the things that really stand out for you in terms of best practices?
Well, that not interruption in the middle of a sprint is one of the very important factors. I think that is kind of difficult at first not to do it, but as soon as you realize the impact it has, it comes naturally. You only have to wait 2 weeks and you get another piece of shippable code that you can actually look at, and you can actually see what has been done, and that's a way to avoid misunderstandings because it's only 2 weeks work. If you don't like the product, you can say, okay, this is not what I wanted. I think that's a great advantage.
Great. Thank you very much, Lorraine. I'm just going to step in here and do a little bit of a time check. We've got about 5 minutes to go, and I want to encourage any remaining questions to be just submitted to our chat session. So please do send us your questions. Again, if we don't get to it during the session, we'll follow up with you by email. Hubert, any closing remarks?
Yeah, we have only one slide left, and then the closing slide. The summary or the outcome for the teams, the development teams, the result of this is that the teams are hands-on. Like Elaine was just saying, you can do the job that you chose to do in the best way possible and learn from it and get better from it. That shyness, yeah, it is a team sport. Software development is done with a team, not by just two super coders or super testers. The whole team wins the game and not just two very good players. don't fiddle too much with the process. The Scrum process is barely sufficient. And you were asking earlier about what are common mistakes or pitfalls. The common mistake is that teams leave things out of that Scrum process, say we don't need it here. You do. It's the most often seen thing in my consultancy practice, that teams are leaving things out and wonder why Scrum is not working optimally. Don't leave steps out of the Scrum process. And that takes us through the materials. So the key things that we spoke about is executives can get a lot of things out of Scrum, a lot of benefits, but not for free. It is not like you don't have involvement. You get the steering wheel, now sit in the driver's seat, be in the demos every 2 weeks, see where the product is going, and if it needs adjustments, create that adjustments. Don't kill the flow, don't interrupt sprints, like Lorraine was saying a couple of times, but between sprints or from release to release, do create the change that your organization needs. Don't forget that it's about the people. It's a team sport what we're doing here. Let the people be their best, and then you get results out of it. Last thing, metrics and the visibility, that's your control. It can be uncomfortable to let go of teams and let them do their own development, decide the how, decide the estimates. You will have metrics in place. You will see new software emerging every 2 weeks. That's your control in this whole environment. And with that, Karen, I'm going to hand it back to you, because then we're in the last minutes and we're on our Q&A slide.
Great. Thank you very much, Hubert and Lorraine. I'm getting a question on, what are the lessons learned in partnering for Agile?
Can I take that one? As an independent person, yes, I do collaborate with Bellatrix, yet I'm independent. I work with more outsourcing, nearshore, farshore, offshore solutions. It's a common situation in US software development. The more you outsource whole teams, and the whole team is developers and testers and a specialist and product people, could be a business analyst, the more you keep that as a group together in a single location, the more success you will get. In other words, building on that remark that I gave earlier, that software development is a team sport, that team needs to communicate. A tester doesn't test. That's old style. A tester designs. A tester writes test cases, gives them to developers and says, here, you build software that passes those tests. But that whole here build software, that's a discussion, that's an exploration. If you create a number of time zones between those people, you create problems in the communication. So lesson number one for me, the best success I've seen with distributed teams is the teams being distributed. I've seen it 5-6 years ago while working at AOL, and Bellatrix had nothing to do with it. But that worked the best, and it's still the mechanism that I use when I outsource. The other thing is the fewer time zones between you and your development teams, the easier communication will get. The best way to get me on my soapbox is to talk about resources in India. India has people working there, and you need to communicate with those people. They don't like working at midnight and communicate at midnight. So treat them as people means that either that every now and then you will work at midnight to get a good communication going. That's hard. I am more in favor of working near shore to ease the communication than with offshore, far shore solutions where somebody is always suffering to keep the communication going, and the communication is crucial. Designs, documents don't solve that problem. That's why Agile is so popular, and plan-driven waterfall development is failing so much. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Hubert. And I think we need to leave it there. We're just at the top of the hour. I want to thank everyone for attending today's session, and I want to especially thank Hubert and Lorraine for being with us today. As a follow-up, we'll definitely be emailing you a copy of today's presentation and a link to the recording. But please do join us for upcoming webinars as well. Our lineup over the next couple of months includes a webinar on QA and testing, specifically in Agile. We're also working on a webinar around design thinking, so we'll look forward to your joining us for those. Again, thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Okay, thank you too.
Thanks.
And bye-bye.